Happy Mother's Day. Where applicable. Sometimes you're an aunt, sometimes. I have a lot of mothers being at the church. Adopted mothers and grandmothers. And being Mother's Day, I thought it was very appropriate to talk about sports. And being that we live in the World Golf Village area, where we have 2 prominent golf courses in the area, I thought it was appropriate to talk about baseball. There we go, thanks. I can almost hear the park, right? It's a unique sport because it's a team sport on defense, but it's also an individual sport. And one's sole performance can benefit the entire team. So we all want a hit, right? We don't want a little, we want a big hit, right? Come on, everybody, go. Like, think about it. Everybody's on base, right? And, I used to live in Atlanta, and I thought, it was kind of like Hank Aaron was my hero. But as I got older, I think I liked Babe Ruth, Kind of came up to this thing, he just would do one of these numbers, right? And everybody wants that big hit from the Babe, right? And he throws up, and he does that. Thank goodness that went well. I was really nervous about Karen being right there, and Barb. Woo! Now, baseball's a statistician's dream. There's statistics on everything, and when you're a player at bat, there's batting average, there's a home run, there's runs scored, there's runs batted in. Those are called RBIs. But that's called a what? What did I just do right there? It's a bunt. That's right. It's a bunt. And usually when someone bunts, what happens? They take off running. Do they get on base? Sometimes. But do they normally get on base? And what is that act called? It's called a sacrifice. That bunting, someone comes up, they want to hit, but if they're going to do that, it counts against their numbers. It's a sacrifice. It doesn't get a lot of recognition. There's no record, no statistics. You can't go to Coopersville and there's a Hall of Famer that this is the best bunter ever. Should be though, right? And a sacrifice, it hurts their individual statistics, their numbers. Because, as Ed said, it usually results in an out. It's a thankless act. And you rarely see it in Major League Ball today. It's all about big money. And teams want to pay big to have that one player that hits the home run. And these players, oh yeah, thanks for that. And these players swing for the fences, striking out about 80% of the time. But as long as they're hitting home runs, everyone's happy. It's exciting. It's moving. It's passionate. It funnels in money. But it's also altering the game, changing its philosophy, which used to be to win as a team. But today, winning is a byproduct of making money for the organization. The philosophy now is to draw in as many fans as possible by promoting flashy players that hit the ball hard, which makes you wonder, is it even baseball anymore? But a particular thing is starting to emerge. These franchises that are spending all this money on these big hitters solely to draw in big crowds, these teams aren't winning. Sure, they have monster hitters hitting home runs, but there's no one on base. There's no runs batted in. Whereas Tampa Bay Rays, they're a low-budget team who doesn't have a lot of money like other franchises. Tampa still plays fundamental baseball. They still play baseball. They hit the ball to put it in play, not to crush it out of the park. And once they get someone on base, the art of advancement, the art of baseball, which relies on the entire team to win the game, they work together. They steal bases, they sacrifice, and they're winning. And they're showing the world that a sacrifice changes the game. So, what does this have to do with today's message? Let's turn to John chapter 15 and find out what this has to do with today's message. Chapter 15, verse 12. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. As beautifully sung by the ladies. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant doesn't know what his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I have learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and I appointed you to go out and bear fruit, fruit that will last. Then the Father will give you whatever you ask in my name. This is my command: love each other. This is the word of God for the people of God. So, using baseball as a backdrop, what can we learn from baseball that might apply to that text? There's 5 important lessons that we can learn. Number 1, a sacrifice, it's not glamorous, it's not exciting, and it's not popular. Number 2, a sacrifice doesn't draw. But, number 4, a sacrifice is going to benefit the entire team. And number 5, a sacrifice is going to change the game. It's appropriate for today's message because nestled in that bracketed message is the fundamental element of Christianity. The core, the root, the essence of what it means to be Christian, to sacrifice. Now, if you're still following along, we're going to frame it out like a baseball franchise. So God the Father, with the Holy Spirit and Jesus, they own a baseball team. They're franchise owners. And Jesus, being the owner, is telling us, if you want to play baseball, there's one rule. It's no crying in baseball, but there's one rule. The rule is, verse 12, my command is this: love each other as I have loved you. That's the one rule. That's the command. That's the mark of authentic Christianity. It's the one rule. And if we obey that one rule, we're going to get a baseball jersey. And our name on the jersey is love. We're the lovers. We love. But Jesus, being the owner, he's not going to stop there. He gets up out of the booth, he leaves the owner box, and he's going to show us how to play. And we're commanded to play like him. So, how does Jesus play? How does he play the game? Let's go to verse 13. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for friends. That's how he plays. There's 2 points to this verse. It's an important verse. First one is, it's a noble thing to do, isn't it? You see that glamorized in Hollywood today. There's something fundamental about self-sacrifice. It resonates with, it's universal. It's the ultimate sacrifice. Number 2, back to our baseball illustration, what if there are people on our team that we're not friends with? What if we don't like them? And when we're at bat, we have to sacrifice for them. It's the entire team. It's advancing the team. Now, Jesus made his sacrifice for the world, a world in which he made us all his friends. And that's what Pastor Mike preached on last week. We reside in Christ. So if we are to do the same for our sacrifice, it should benefit the entire church, not just for those that we call friends, not just for the ministries that we like. Verse 14, you are my friends if you do what I command. This is a conditional statement, if then. It's a requirement of friendship, doing what Jesus commands. We are to be obedient. And for our obedience, we get what is revealed in verse 15, which is, I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. So that's a big verse, so let's unpack that a little bit. First of all, Jesus is calling us into friendship. We're not just players on the field or employees. We're more than just co-owners or contractual obligations. We're friends, we're families, and we've entered into a relationship that extends beyond playing on the field. We know the master's business. We know the family business. So our invitation for a relationship with Jesus, it's to reveal our divine purpose in him. Divine purpose. That's big picture stuff. That's not only seeing what's on the baseball field, that's seeing the entire baseball franchise. That's the vendors, the marketing, the scouts, the training camps. We're to learn where we learn the fundamentals. And even how the entire franchise impacts the community and the world. Verse 16, Jesus said, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go out and bear fruit, fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. It's another big verse. First of all, we're drafted. Jesus chose us. He scouted us. He knows what we're capable of since he created us. And now we're drafted for the bigs. And in the minor leagues, they're always waiting for that phone call. They're waiting for that phone call. They call it like going upstairs or going downtown. They have a lingo for it. I'm not sure what it is. So being drafted, or one might say elected, it's not a privilege. It's a purpose. So what is our specific purpose? We're to bear fruit. And bearing fruit that is a part of the branches, that's a part of the vine, which resides in the master's vineyards. My brother, down in Putnam County, he's got a vineyard. And the person he bought it for, they made wine. We haven't, but it's possible to make wine. So every year, the grapes grow and the birds come and eat them all. So we haven't figured out how to get that to happen. So then last week I was fishing with my son in the St. Johns River, and we found this canal out in the middle of nowhere. It got stuck a couple times. And he says, Dad, look, it's a wild blackberry bush. So he goes, let's go over there and get some blackberries. And I'm going, wasps. So we go over there and we anchor and we tie off, and he's up there climbing this tree that I hope didn't fall on us. And he gets a wild blackberry bush with blackberries on it. And he says, I'm going to graft this at home. I'm like, okay, buddy. It was fruit. It was fruit that we can consume, but we're not going to put it in my brother's vineyard. We're not making wine out of that fruit. So back to the baseball illustration. We're playing in the bigs on Jesus' team of love, and we're in the Father's ballpark. Sure, we could go outside the organization and go to the batting cages and do batting practice and maybe play catch, but there's no runs batted in. There's no scoring for the organization. And if we do this, we shouldn't expect to get equipment from the franchise. So then back to verse 17, we have a restatement of verse 12. This is my command, love each other. It's a repeating thesis for the entire section. It's loving one another is the mark of authentic Christian discipleship. That's the entire section. So if you look at 12 to 17, you see this bracketing there. It says something in 12, it repeats it in 17. That bracketing in Bible study, it's called inclusio. It's just a fancy word that means that there's kind of like bookshelves. And what that means is we got to pay attention to the entire section. We can't just grab no greater love out of context. It's in context that it's applied. So, here's the entire section in context. If we are to abide in Jesus, remain in him and through him to the Father, this has to be done by loving one another. We live a sacrificial life and are called into friendship through obedience. The friendship has revealed in us a divine purpose. And through our divine purpose, we are appointed to bear fruit. Fruit in the vine of Jesus, the only fruit that is beneficial for the Father's vineyard, the only fruit that's going to be made into new wine, wine that would be used in the everlasting banquet of our Lord, a banquet of love. How do we do that? How do we do that? How do we play like Jesus? He sacrificed, the ultimate sacrifice. So how do we sacrifice? Well, let's look back at those 5 things, those 5 lessons from baseball. A sacrifice, number 1, it's not going to be glamorous. It's not going to be exciting. And it's not going to be popular. Sure, we want the base hits of Christendom. We want the single of baptism. I want to see a baptism every week. We want that. It's exciting. Or maybe a double when we see confirmation. What? You only do confirmation every other week, other year? I want to see it every week. A triple. We want to see a miraculous healing. Are you? Or a home run where you might have the opportunity to give your life for Christ, physically, just to give your life. Sure, we want to see those big game events, but usually we're called for the little, unrecognized sacrifices, like the ones in baseball there's no award for, like the one that mom does. But it moves the family forward. It moves the team forward. And it's through humility and obedience that the Lord uses us. Those are the necessary components that model Christ's life. Number 2, a sacrifice doesn't draw big crowds. Church is a big production now. Can I get an amen on that? There are some churches out there that, especially after COVID, they're aspiring to be a production business. There's a focus that's been changed over a large viewing audience for their big game show on Sunday. It's exciting. It's moving. It's passionate. It feels good. And it might draw crowds. but is it lasting? 1 hour on Sunday shouldn't be our one big play for the week. Sunday should be the after-game celebration of the other 167 hours that we're living. I had a mentor tell me once, if you want what they have, you have to do what they do to get it. With that truism, shouldn't we model our lives after Christ, the suffering servant? He avoided large crowds, but he found rest in the Father. He had 12 followers, but they changed the world. And he stayed out of the government. They still executed him. He used chance encounters for conversions and his love to attract others. Our faith should be that of attraction, not promotion. And if we're gained to people for Christ, it's because they see something different in us, in our lives, and they want what we have. And a faith like that takes commitment. It takes responsibility, and it takes time. It means that I have to be in a relationship with people. Now, I have to. And that's hard, especially if you know me. It puts me out there, makes me vulnerable. And because people are hurt, sometimes they're sick. And hurt and sick people, they hurt sick people. Number 3, stranger, a coworker, family, and yes, surprise, even other Christians. And sometimes sick and hurt people hurt you so much that you don't want to get out of bed. Make you sick to your stomach. Have you using unhealthy coping remedies. Cause sleepless nights. And just have you crying out to Jesus in a wounded soul cry. Well, take comfort, for Jesus knows. Remember, his own people crucified him. Is somebody crucifying you in your walk today? Is somebody forcing you to make a sacrifice? Perhaps it's a stranger or a friend mocking you on social media. Maybe it's a coworker or a boss forcing unjust protocol. Or a family member or someone in your household who's constantly bringing up your life prior to following Christ. Or perhaps it's another Christian from another church. Maybe it's someone from your own church. Or just maybe, somebody in this room. When that happens to you, Jesus is there for you. Not as a lofted franchise owner that doesn't know your pain. No, for he just hit a home run and he's in the dugout with you. He's right there next to us, encouraging us, walking with us. And sometimes he's holding us. And how does Jesus hold you? Well, Deb, for our Mother's Day gifts, has provided bookmarks for everybody. And on this bookmark is a poem, He Holds Me. Will you read along with me? He holds me, not like a trophy for the world to see. He holds me, not like playing catch, tossed back endlessly. He holds me, not like a burden laboriously. He holds me, not like a flower, delicately. He holds me, not over his shoulders, hanging carelessly. He holds me like a babe in arms, resting peacefully. He holds me. For when we're born after the APGAR score, what's the first thing that's done? We're placed in our mother's arms. We're held. So after this journey of life, our first experience in this world is to be held. It's fitting because Jesus is holding us the rest of our lives. And Jesus will get us through the hurts and the sacrifices. Number 4, our sacrifice is going to benefit the team. In terms of Christianity, of this gospel, of this chapter, of this section, a sacrifice is done in love, it's done in community, and done in the vine. In baseball, you can't perform a sacrifice outside the team, outside playing the game, outside the baseball. You can't be by yourself and I'm sacrificing. It doesn't work. So a sacrifice has to be made in context. You've got to have a team. If we're doing everything in Jesus' name, but we're not part of community, we're doing it wrong. If we're not relational, we're doing it wrong. Jesus is a friend in which we abide, in which we can win. Together we can change the game. Number 5, our sacrifice can change the game. As seen in teams in Major League like Tampa Bay Rays, the return of sacrifice is bringing the game of baseball back. So what changes the game in Christianity? Well, first of all, in order to change the game, we've got to play. We've got to play. Christianity is not a spectator sport. We've got to play. Nothing in the game is going to change if we're not playing. And, well, let me take that back. It would be better if you helped the team. And we don't need big plays. So how do we win? How do we win by winning souls for Christ? That's winning. And ultimately, our goal in life, I tell the kids ever since they're little, when they're little and they don't understand what's life all about, kids, this is a virtual reality game. And our goal is to go home. That's our goal. We are to go home to where we came from, which is our Father. I tell the little baseball to go home. Can we go home by hitting that solo home run? Of course we can. But wouldn't it be better if the bases were loaded? And even if you're not one of those big hitters, our collective goal is to advance the team. That means we sacrifice our need for stardom. In the church, we call sacrifice martyrdom, to be a martyr. And the word is now associated with a sole act of sacrifice to sacrifice your physical life for your beliefs. You become a martyr. It's become like a noun, but it's actually a verb, and it means witness. That's the literal translation of martyr. It's witness. And being Christ's witness doesn't mean we have to hit a home run. Doesn't mean we have to hit a single or double or a triple. Sometimes it means we're not getting on base at all. All we have to do is put the ball in play. That's it. And the act might seem little, but these little things, they're so important. It creates action in the game, and the action can have game-changing effects. like everyday acts of sacrifice, of servitude. Moms do it all the time for the family, for the children. And we have little acts of service right here in the church. Like our volunteers for Operation Christmas Child. Sure, we have like a big event. That big event takes all year to plan. And when the event's over, they start over again. That's when they start planning. It's an all-year event. And people who work behind the scenes with the youth, they move chairs. They're chaperone signs, or throw down mulch, or clean bathrooms, or help administratively. And people who sacrifice their treasure, who give not what's left over, but the first and finest fruits. That's the bunt. That's the pop fly. That's the sacrifice that helps to move the church forward. Let's be like them. Let's be like Mom. Let's be like Christ. For even though our sacrifice won't come close to what Jesus did on that cross, the ultimate sacrifice for the advancement of all mankind, just maybe our sacrifice will help one person advance. And with the help of our teammates, ultimately help bring them home. That's another run batted in. Thanks be to God.